Hey, everybody, welcome back to Build Better. I'm Matt, and as promised, we have another kick ass interview show today. So, without further ado, I'm going to jump right in. Let me introduce my good friend, Bryce Harem. Bryce is the owner and founder of BTG Services. They're a consulting company where he works directly with small business owners, helping them transition away from being the guy who runs everything to being the leader who runs the company. We're going to keep his intro brief because we've got a lot to talk about, and we'll get into all the nuts and bolts of Bryce and BTG and what he's doing. But first and foremost, Bryce, welcome to the show, man. I appreciate you coming on.
Man, Matt, thanks for calling me. Thanks for having me on. I'm excited to be here.
Absolutely. So, just to kind of give everyone a little bit of backstory, Bryce and I met, I think, through LinkedIn. We connected originally, and we talked, I don't know, 2, 3, 4 months ago first. And Bryce is actually one of two people that was kind of ribbing me to get off my ass and get this podcast started. So this is in part because of you, and I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing yet.
I don't know. I believe it was a ribbing both ways, in which I'm still lagging behind on our bet. The deal was I would do mine if you did yours, and so far I hate to say, but I'm the one failing at producing the other side of that bargain. But
It's
we'll work on that.
it's all right, man. I got a tally board in my other room. I put a check mark every day that you don't have yours yet. So
Perfect.
we'll count them up later. Let's get right to it, man. Bryce, why don't you kind of give the listeners the 30-second version of who you are, what BTG is, and who you're trying to help with your services.
Yeah. You know, I'm a pretty simple guy. Honestly, I'm got about 18 years overall in the industry, mainly project management, but general management as well. The last 5 years before turning into BTG here. BTG I started about 2 years ago, working as a side job actually while I was working as general manager for a company called Central Paving, and just recently, in fact, just in 2026, I took BTG full time. And the biggest kind of the people we help now, mainly seven-figure, low eight-figure companies, 10 to 50 employees is really the niche. I've tended to work mostly with civil, asphalt, concrete companies so far. But the idea is I want to eliminate owner dependency in construction. I mean, that's the goal. That's the biggest reason of why I started it. It was one of the biggest transitions and reasons I jumped into the general management role. That was my responsibility, was to remove the need for the ownership of the company, the owners, to be the people running everything. And I believe that if we remove owner dependency, it actually helps everybody win. Because the more you give the ownership and the autonomy and everything to the people down the chain, the better they become, the more they feel fulfilled, and the more we actually grow as an industry. We can scale, we can be sustainable, and that's what we all want.
I love that, man, and it's really good framing. So, and I've read on your LinkedIn quite a bit actually, but from one owner to another, you and I quote, "You don't have a business, you have a prison."
Yeah.
Where does that come from, and was there a moment in your career that kind of crystallized for you, where that really became apparent? Because listen, man, because that's really true in a lot of cases, and I'm interested to hear your take on it.
It's gonna be funny, and I'm not gonna lie. I get a lot of flack for it because I've never owned a construction business. So I get that all the time from people, and it's, well, you never owned the business. Yeah, but I was the guy who took the business out of the owner's hands. I have seen from the other side what it does. And personally, I'm actually the one who tried to do it all. I thought that I could come in and be the guy, be the one who did it all. And I tried to do it all myself. I tried to manage and facilitate and run every conversation through every aspect of the company, and it's not sustainable. It's not physically or mentally possible to keep that up long term. And I was trying to do it with, we were about a $15 million company at the time, and there was just no way. There was no way to do it. And the idea was, as I started to grow out of that, I started developing my team that we had at the time. I started to develop my team in a way that I needed to build out a leadership team that ran the company so it wasn't reliant on one person. Because if you have a company that's relying on one person, you don't have a company, you have a person. And that's the problem. And most owners, from my experience of working with and being around, and most of my life has been in that $1 to $20 million range companies. That's why I stay in that range. But most of my experience in that time, it's the 0 to 1 million mark is it's the go mode. It's the hustle phase. It's where people, I mean, the owner's literally the one doing everything. Then you have so many 99% of contractors are under 10 million. So they're down in that range, but a lot of them stay in that realm simply because they never knew how to let go of that hustle phase. And the problem that I find is it is crippling the people on their team. It's not just the owner. I believe that owners deserve to be able to take vacations. They believe they shouldn't have to work 90 hours. You shouldn't have to miss your kid's baseball game or basketball game or dance recital. I believe everybody on the company should be able to do that. We just have to set the company up that way. And it is possible. And when we do learn to let go mentally, more than anything, mentally, we have to change that identity that we have to be the one there to do it. That the team actually thrives more so than if you're there all the time.
So let's stay there because that one hits kind of close to home. I didn't when I bought Schaefer Construction, we were about a $3 to $5 million company. That was about, call it 10 years ago now. So I wasn't there for the 0 to 1, but it still sure as hell felt like it. And you talk about the owner kind of doing everything, and that was my role. I came in to a company that wasn't mine, and I literally performed every role across the board, top to bottom, side to side. I was the business development, the marketing, the sales guy, the estimator, the project manager, the owner, the payroll, everything. It took me a very, very long time, and I want to hear your take on why that might be. But before I could get to the point where I could let go of some, right? I was slowly building the team around me, and I had people that were at least qualified enough to do what their specific job descriptions were. But even with them in place, it was really, really hard for me to just kind of let go and trust my parachute, right? So I'm sure you see that a lot given what you do. Do you have any insight into why that is? Is it a trust thing? Is it a history or what's your take?
So I'm gonna use a term that is very widely known, and I'll say there's some people who argue it doesn't exist. I believe it absolutely exists, and it's micromanagement.
Oh yeah.
That's the term I use. And I say that I absolutely believe it exists because I am a micromanager by nature. I had to learn how to let go of control. I want to control every aspect of every part of the job. I want to dive in. So I have to actively think through how to step back. And owners, especially owners in that, when we're talking this size, let's say the 1 to 8 million, 1 to 10 million, in that range, when you come out of that 0 to 1 and you're doing it all, you're still the one trying to do it all. Like you just said, every decision runs through you. You're trying to go from being the hero to the manager to the strategic leader. That's where you get the sustainability and the scalability. Problem is, a lot don't get there. And it's either by choice or it's a fear of letting go. That's what I see. I don't believe most people want to be micromanagers. I just believe it's the role that shaped you based on trying to run your company. It's you when when you're used to doing something your way, when you're used to being the one, I mean, it's your reputation. You built the company or you took it over. The people you've grown with, the customers you have grown with, it's you. You've done it all. You've always been the one to solve the problem and handle the situation. And now you're having to trust somebody else to do it. And I think probably the hardest part I had, and one of the biggest parts, the biggest struggles in that is if you're not careful and you let go of too much too soon, all of a sudden something backfires. Either you're not ready or they make a mistake or they fail at what they're doing, because that's going to happen, that you bring it back. And once you bring it back, it's really hard to let it back, let it go again. I was speaking with a contractor a month ago. He's a 30-year contractor, concrete contractor, about 3-4 million. Been there for a long time, and they're successful, profitable. But he now wants to look at succession planning and getting out. He's got kids who are in the business. He would love to hand it off to him in the next 5 years. And I I don't know how to let go. Because I promised myself when I started this company that this wasn't going to be me, that I was going to run and this company was going to thrive and we are going to be all about the team. He goes, it's like I just blinked and 30 years later, here I am. I'm the project manager. I'm the senior estimator. I'm out in the field when they need, for the big jobs, the major jobs. He's out there actually doing the work or running the crew. He's doing the payroll. He's doing it all. He just had to be in that control. It's an identity thing. And I think that's the systems, as far as, to build something sustainable and scalable. I think you need three things. You need identity, you need structure, and you need the systems. Well, those are actually very easy to put in place once you get in the frame of mind that you're actually willing to let go. That's the hardest part, is changing the identity of who you've been for so long that you now have to say, no, my identity, I am not the one who does it. I am the one who develops other people to do it. And you have to change that. And that's the tough part.
Yeah, and I can say that I definitely went through that. There was probably trust issues in the beginning, because I didn't ever consider myself a micromanager, but I know I was. But it was always, no one can do it as well as I can. Not that they weren't qualified, but they're not going to do it my way. And if it's not done my way, something's going to fail. The boat's going to sink. And it took a long time. What is kind of funny in my circumstance, anyways, there's this big dichotomy that shifted with me about 3 years ago. I went from being the guy doing everything and that everyone relied on to I built this leadership team around me, and I built this group of absolute killers in our industry who can handle so much on their own. And now I'm playing the role of like, well, don't come to me with this stuff. You guys are fully empowered to go make decisions. We joke, we have a saying in the office, like, as long as you can fix a problem for X number of dollars. For some people, it's $5,000. For some people, it's $500,000. Right? You have the ability. Go fix it. Go do your job. Do what you're best at, and keep the ship floating in the right direction. And it's fun to me to watch, because people get kind of nervous, right? They're afraid to screw up. Where before I was afraid they were going to screw up. Now I've got the absolute confidence in my people, but they're afraid to screw up. And so I tell them a lot, like, this is just like touching the stove, right? You're gonna do it. Let's get it done with quick. Screw it up, burn your hand, and then let's learn from it so you never do it again. But it's a neat, kind of interesting leadership dynamic that I've seen, and it's weird. I'll give you that. It's very weird.
What was you mentioned that if it wasn't done your way, that you thought it wasn't going to be done right. What was the driver behind it had to be done your way? Where did that come from?
Probably arrogance, ego. Probably a lot of it was just being terrified, right? Those were the days when if we screwed something up, I might not be putting food on my family's table. And so it was hell or high water. There's no slowing down. We have to succeed. We can't fail. There's a guy I follow, a friend of mine, his name is Josh Koznick, and I heard him say something the other day on his show. We were coming to that point where we were starting to get big enough that we were heavy, but we were still small enough that we were very, very fragile. And that fragility, that ability that everything could just go kaput, could just break and we'd be done. That's, I think, what drove my insanity that I have to do everything. And again, I'm probably not the best person at doing, I know I'm not the best person at doing all of the steps in the business, but at that point in time, it didn't matter because I just knew it had to get done. And I think that's really where it came from. It was the fear of failure, but on that scale, failure was the end, right? That was the end all. We're done with this show. Matt's going to go sell insurance or some shit for the rest of his life.
How did you, I'm curious, how did you step back? How did you start?
It was a lot of therapy, right? And therapy in the office, right? And it came from hiring the right people. And that was my therapy. That was the therapeutic side of it. And when I started bringing on people that matched the culture, that matched my vision, that really understood what I was trying to build first, and then they also understood how they could be a part of that. It was those slow changes. And believe me, dude, that took years. I went through a lot of incorrect choices in hiring. I hired for different reasons. Usually it was, oh shit, we're starting a project in 2 weeks and we don't have anyone to run it. Who's out there? Who's willing? And, you know, a lot of young companies, I think, deal with that. A lot of old companies deal with that to some degree. But what I found in my company is whenever I made those rash decisions based on need and not on fit, they never worked. So it was down the road farther when I started hiring based on fit and not necessarily need. I started taking leaps, financial leaps, bringing people into the mix that, some of their salaries were terrifying at that point in time. But it was when I started doing that I think I forced myself to kind of realize, okay, you're going to bring in this guy or this woman, you're going to pay him whatever you're going to pay him. Why in the world would you want them to just sit there twiddling their thumbs waiting for you to tell them to do something? To me, that's a bad investment, right? I could do that myself. I could hire, some guy sleeping in the corner of Home Depot to go and twiddle his thumbs and pay him a lot less. So I think that was really the crux of it with me, is that I just started bringing in the right people, and the rest kind of started organically to grow for us anyways.
So how'd you go about that? And I know this is technically your interview to me, but I'm extremely
hey man,
curious
let's roll.
too.
Yeah.
So because what I love is there is no, I mean, there's just like there's no person that's the same. There is no team dynamic. There is no company that's the same. And that's honestly what I love so much about these things and about doing what I do, is going in, and I like the people problems. I like the dynamic of trying to sort out where the gaps are, what the issues are, and how we can structure something around it. But when it comes to hiring, it's something that it's very personal to me, because I will say that I've probably hired more of the wrong people than I have the right people through the course of my career. And a lot of people say, oh, you just got to hire the right people. I say it all the time. You don't hire the best people, you hire the right people. And it's so much easier said than done. And so I'm curious, how did you structure that? How did you work through that? You said first, core values, culture. So did you create the identity you wanted first? Did you have it already? Or when it came to hiring the right people, where'd you start?
In terms of the identity, yeah, I had it. I mean, I structured our core values and our company vision very, very early, after I came on board. But like most companies that I see and that I deal with, the core values were, it was a cool sign on the wall. And we said we had them. People would ask once in a while on podcast interviews, or well, tell me about your core values, and I could talk about them all day long back then. But then when I would look around and actually see what I was doing as a leader, as a strategic owner in the business, they didn't get any play. So I think that was part of the change too, the shift when I started recognizing that, core values and this whole culture phenomenon, if you will, it's not bullshit. And if you actually treat it with the respect it deserves and you give it the weight that it should have in your company, for lack of better word or lack of eloquent term, like good things start to happen. And legitimately, that's when good things started happening at Schaefer Construction. And, I tell everybody now, we hire by our core values, we fire by them. We do all of our decisions at some rudimentary level are based, at least originally, on our core values and how well the fit is, whether it's employee, a client, a subcontractor, a vendor. And it's really that reliance on our value structure that allowed me to kind of do that. And that's when the good hires started to happen. Don't get me wrong. We still make mistakes. We're not perfect. We're a growing company, but you got to break a few eggs to make an omelet too. So that's where we're at.
Yeah, I think it's, I like the way you said that, because a company is going to have a culture no matter what. You're either intentional in how you build it, or it gets built for you.
Yes.
In the environment that you create. And when I say that, you create that, it's you, the owner, the one at the top, which is typically, especially when we're talking this size, we're not really talking CEOs, we're talking owners. You are the example. You are the standard. And no matter what anybody says, no matter whether you're around 1 day a week or 5 days a week, what they see you do, they will never, they probably, not never, I don't like to say never, I don't like to use the absolutes. They very rarely will exceed or even meet what you do. So you got to assume that they're going to be a little bit below you, possibly, with the goal of trying to push them up and above. But the only way they go up is if you go up. And that idea of that mindset of the field drives the bus, the office makes sure the lights are green, the owner, or the upper management, but the owner in this case, you make sure there's a road to drive on. As long as you make sure there's a road to drive on, you put the people in place that carry the most influence. And that's where I talk about the middleman and the people that we would go through that. The people you develop underneath you, they carry everything out. They hold the standard. You set the standard. And I think that's a really important dynamic to push and to push responsibility on the employees of, no, you are the one, the foreman, the superintendent, the project managers, who I call ideally the middlemen in the group. That's men and women, but the middleman, they are the ones who carry the most opportunity for impact on your entire company. And they are the ones who hold the standard. And if we don't give them the opportunity to own it, they're not going to take it. I had a problem. So when I first started BTG, it was strictly meant to develop and train and coach the middleman. I worked specifically with foremen, superintendents, operations managers a little bit, project managers, but it was designed to help the frontline leadership and work through that. And even it's up recently when I finally took this company full time, as I started going through it and working through this area, I discovered I could develop all of these teams. I could develop the middleman across all these companies. But if the owner at his core wasn't willing to let go, then what we were doing wouldn't work. They can't take what you aren't willing to give. And that's where we start. We have to start at the let go portion, then we build out down the chain.
So when we talked last time, excuse me, and I wrote this down, you flat out said to me, your business won't change until you do. So I don't do what you do, obviously, but I have to imagine that that's a hard thing to say to somebody's face when you're working in a consultant basis like you do. What does that usually look like, and how does that usually land? Because what you just said is true, right? It has to start at the top, and if an owner, if the leader, the manager, whoever your subject is, isn't willing to change, it's all for nothing. So when you kind of smack them across the face with that one, how does that usually work?
Well, I usually don't do it call one.
Fair, fair.
Actually, sometimes we do. Sometimes we do. Sometimes I've even done it in discovery calls. And the the whole idea and if it, you kind of get a sense of pushback with certain people, and you do tend to deal with. I mean, we all have egos, right? So we
Oh
deal a
yeah.
lot with egos, especially in construction, and that ego side definitely tends to rear its head in smaller companies where people are just you again, you're the one who's doing it all, and it's very difficult to step away, and you've also never been told things like that. Um, for me, it's a very simple question of what am I here for? What are we, why are you asking, why are you meeting with me? What are you looking for? Well, I want to break free from this prison. I want to own a business and not a job. I want to not be I want to be able to have a family that isn't used to living without me. I want to be able to go on vacation. I want to be able to step back and work on the business and not in the business. Because right now I'm doing no strategic development for our company. This company needs a visionary. They need a CEO. They need somebody to carry to the next level. I can see it, but I have no time to work on it. Okay, perfect. Well, let's talk about it. Tell me about what you got right now. Tell me about what you're doing. And as we just go through it, it's if you truly want these things, then you first have to realize that it won't change until you do. You are the problem. Whether you want it, whether by accident or by choice. And usually it's by accident, but it is your behavior and your actions that are enabling the very thing you're trying to get rid of or you're trying to change. So you can hire as many people as you want, even the best ones, and bring them in. But if you don't change the mindset and the behavior and the actions that got you here, it won't change.
So what does that shift actually require from an owner, from the owners you deal with? And I kind of talked about my story, but what do you see has to change first in a if there is such thing as a typical situation? I know everybody's different, every company's different, values are different, all that, but from a higher kind of global perspective,
Mhm.
where is the best place for an owner to start to work on that change that's required to get to the promised land of being able to work on the business finally? Because I think that's a huge struggle for all business owners. I still struggle with it, and I would love to have nothing but time to work on the business and be strategic. And I have a lot more now than I used to, but it's nowhere near what I wanted. So let's kind of dive into that one a little bit. If you have
Well,
any insight.
it's real. It's really easy when they already recognize it. I mean, that's the that's the best. When you know, I would say I don't necessarily. I kind of get two different types of people I will talk to and I'll speak with, and it's either ones who recognize that they're the bottleneck, and they need help in how to get out of it. That those are the very easy conversations. They both work the same way. It just takes a little to get into either one of them. The other one is they just see that they aren't able to do what they want or what they feel like they should be doing, and they don't know why. So there's two sides of it. And sometimes my employees are lazy. You blame, you point fingers at kind of this scenario of what's going on. But it usually comes back to the same thing. And the very first question I will ask almost everybody I work with is, what do you want? And if you answer, I don't know, it's okay, well, then you're not ready. That's a problem. We need to know what you want. It's also what your company needs, but you need to know what you want as the owner. Do you do you want to do you want to work in sales? Okay. You can still head sales if you want to, but if, it's going to be strategic in how we do it. Do you want to be fully stepped out where you don't run a thing and you are just a silent owner? Okay. That changes the structure of the organization. If that's what you want, we can do that, but it changes the structure. You want to be a full-time CEO? Okay, we can do that too. It's going to change the structure. The structure is going to look, now we're going to have these tiers down here. We're going to move through. And so once you kind of get into that space and you can sort out, all right, what are we looking for first? What design or structure of the company are we looking for? Then it goes into how you hire the right people. And the very first thing that I look at is identity. If you don't have a company identity, we need to create one. Because if the identity is just you, when it's just you, it's easy. It's all up here. But the core values, the mission statement, the vision statement, the purpose, our why, I think that's a big one. If they're not written down, they don't exist. And they say, yes, it's more than just writing on the wall, but you got to have them written somewhere. You got to have it down. And one that I add on top of that is, what are your non-negotiables? And that is 3 to 5 key items that you believe, and you, because you are setting the tone as this, that are your non-negotiables, not what we strive for. That's core values. Core values are what we strive for on a daily basis. Non-negotiables are, these are the things you will meet, that you must meet to even be a part of the team. Come up with 3 to 5 of them. Create an agreement. Make it part of your interview process. Talk about them all the time. And they're non-negotiables for a reason. So as the owner, you have to meet those non-negotiables as well. So once we set that item, that stuff up, you can start to interview, find the right people. We set up the structure of the company in an org chart, the way it is now, the way you envision it a year from now, the way you envision it 3 to 5 years down the road. And I think that's kind of what you did, even if you did it subconsciously. You were hiring people, the right people, even if you didn't necessarily know, because you almost had a bigger vision on where it could go. And that's one of the biggest risks. I think I don't remember the exact range, but I think it is like the low seven figure. It's like 1 million to 5, 6, 7 million, something like that. It's called like the expensive phase, because you are looking at, you need to buy equipment, you need to front load more things. Instead of having one excavator, now you got to have 2 or 3 excavators. And instead of having one crew, you got to have 2 crews. You start to hire new managers to replace what you're doing, and you're having to do that ahead of time. So you're having to, because you need to anticipate, I'm going to need this person in a year, so I'm going to need to develop this person or pay for this person, and spend the money. And that stuff, like I said, it's, as long as we can get through with what you want, that's great. The the issue comes back to letting go. And that is mental. That is mental more, I mean, more than anything, that's the mindset. So I go back, I push a lot on what I had to do, because I can empathize with people who are scared to let go, because I was terrified to let go. And I still have that fear. And so I start small. It's the same thing when you're building habits. You need to start small and give yourself, stack things on top of each other. So whether it's delegating a task or it's delegating a role, first, if you've got a role for a person, define what success looks like. Even if you're delegating a task, what does success of this task look like in its completion? We've got all of that. Now you know exactly who you're hiring. You know exact role you're trying to get them to fill. They know when they come on, or if they're asked to do that task, what success looks like. There's the delegating of task of when does it need to be done by. I leave out the how on purpose. Do they have the tools they need to succeed? And do they understand why they're doing it? And then we give it to them in small chunks. So you set up a timeline of a year from now, I want this person to be able to do all of these roles to the definition of success. Okay. So where are we going to start? Well, I want them to do them all now. It's not going to happen. Because first of all, they'll try to take it, they'll get overwhelmed, they'll fail, and you'll pull it back. Because that's the habit that we're in. That's the behavior we're in. So we build them one at a time. Let's let go of this, and then we set benchmarks, and you can come back to it every time. It's okay. We're going to do this over a month. We're going to do it in tiers. We're going to hand off this piece, and this piece. Make sure we're coming back every week to make sure that we are actually tracking and in alignment. And as you see that they're working through it, not how you would do it, but they're meeting your goal. Because they're going to do it different than you, which is why I kind of brought up the how stuff you were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
We're all going to do things different. All that matters is, does it look like we want it to in the end? Are we getting the outcome that we defined as success? And if that's the case, then you can hand that off. And we just slowly keep stacking them on. Depending on how much you need to hand off, like you said, it's not an overnight thing. It's a 6 month, it's a year, it's a 5-year thing. I talk to a lot of companies, a lot of owners who are kind of in these succession planning. I never really meant to get into that, but it's kind of getting more into that just because you're at that point where they want to get rid of it. They want to either move on and go do something else. They want to step back. And so they either want to hand it off or they want to sell it. The problem is if you're the only one who's doing it all, your company has no value.
Yeah.
Nobody's going to want to buy it. Nobody wants to buy a job, especially the people who are out there looking to buy businesses. They're not looking to buy one that they got to go work 90 hours a week on. And so we need to focus on how to get that set up over a span of time. And I've dealt with a handful of owners who say, well, I want to hand the company off in 3 years. Okay, well, where are you at? We go through. I'm not saying we can't, but you're already behind. The person you want to hand it off to is the one running the mainline excavator. It's going to take more than 3 years to get there. It's a process of building that out.
Yeah.
And so my whole goal is to help owners set up their company where they become that strategic leader. They are the ones who can have the conversations and get the most out of their team and implement and develop and grow. And that we can keep pushing and developing the crew below them.
So you essentially, coming from a dumb carpenter, I got to boil this down so I can understand it. you take the whole.
I spent some time in framing. I can be there.
You take the whole thing and you teach the owner how to eat the elephant, right? At the end of the day, that's basically what you're doing. Is you're taking the elephant and you're breaking it down into the bite by bite steps to get from where you are now to where you want to go, because so much of us in the entrepreneur space and the construction space, we want what we want. We want it now. And like you just said, I want to get rid of this business in 3 years. That doesn't work like that in reality. And if you try to jump past all the steps, and you're going to leave half the elephant sitting on your plate, and you're not going to get to where you really wanted to go in the first place anyways.
Yep.
Bryce, this has been a fun conversation, man. Somehow we're already up against a time here, but before we close off, so for the guy who's out in the field today, the owner who's working 70, 80, 90 hours a week, burning the candle at both ends, but has this dream in his head or this dream in her head of someday not being the guy or the person in the field, being the person that they thought they were going to be when they signed up to be an owner, right? How do they get a hold of you, and what's the best method to start the conversation?
Well, number one, LinkedIn is the easiest one. And I'll go ahead and throw this out there. Call me 509-899-9731. They can call me and email me as well. I don't know if you're able to put that on here or how we can do that.
We'll put it all in the show notes, but
yeah, people are more than welcome to call. That's the best way so far. Call, email, and LinkedIn. I'm on all the social media channels as well. And I want to say, the last thing I want to kind of say is it's closer than people think. We can set up, you can have the company, you can have the freedom, and you can have the sustainability and scalability that you want. We just have to set it up that way. And it takes, I'm going to end with a little bit of a story. Sorry, it'll be quick.
Yeah,
I know.
have at it.
Because I got somebody got mad at me recently because we were on a discovery call, and he said, "Wait, this sounds like a lot of work." Yeah, it is.
No shit.
You told me that you were going to save me time. This sounds like this is going to take more time. And I go, I laughed. Probably not the thing to do, but I said, the phrase of you have to spend money to make money. We have to spend time to make time. It's going to take a short duration, and that's depending on what we want. That changes, that grows and shrinks depending on what the goals are, and where we're at. But a short duration of time given to implement these things and grow the team and set up the team the way you want it to get you the long-term goal of buying your time back. And I think that's, as long as people recognize that, and as long as they are wanting and willing to see themselves mostly as the bottleneck in that structure, then I'd say let's get to work. Let's have some fun.
I love it. Scared money don't make money, and we'll add the scared time don't make time. So, well, Bryce, I really appreciate you coming on and giving us almost an hour of your time. This has been a fun conversation. Guys, reach out to him. This man knows what he's talking about. I've had the pleasure of having other conversations with Bryce offline, and I can tell you the stories I've heard that this man has lived through make him an absolute expert in this field he chose to embark in. So reach out when you get a chance, and we'll be back next time, guys.